Evening, welcome to the special meeting, Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. Approve the agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, Council don't have any additions or corrections tonight, and I did want to note that Councilmember Christensen did inform me she wasn't going to be able to make the meeting tonight. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Review update of Truck Highway 15 Main Street Reconstruction Project.
Yes, thanks, Mayor and Council. Yeah, like we've spoken about quite a bit, special meeting this evening, worked through some Main Street Highway 15 items. The first item here under communications, I'll just give a general background where we're at as far as the project award, the bids, looking forward a little bit into construction here, recent conversations with MnDOT, and then we'll also talk about the traffic control and detour plan. So just explain that again. You know, we've been through that a few times along the way here, but we'll touch base on that, and then also talk about the actual staging plan downtown, the 4 specific stages of the construction. So with that, at this point, MnDOT has deemed construction essential. So not MnDOT, the governor has deemed MnDOT construction essential. So we're full steam ahead. Nothing's changed at this point. The project has been awarded by MnDOT to R&R Excavating. They were the low bid of the 2 bidders. The actual bid amounts were noted on the resolution within your packet. One was approximately $11.5 million. The other one was just short of $14 million by Dunnick Incorporated. Like we spoke about a few weeks ago, $11.5 million. It was about 20% over the final construction estimate of $9.5 million. Albeit MnDOT was pleased with that amount. We were actually expecting it, or many MnDOT personnel were expecting it to be higher. So it's kind of the new world we're in on the construction contracting standpoint, and hopefully things start to level out on that front, and we can start to gauge this reality, and things don't continue to escalate construction cost-wise. But we'll see what happens next year is what it'll boil down to. With that, yeah, like I said, MnDOT, I learned earlier today, has awarded the contract to R&R Excavating. We have received a revised Schedule I, basically our cost participation commitment. That has been deemed confidential at this point, so myself, Matt have seen that. Really, they don't make it public until after the award.
I thought you said
And
it was awarded.
And I haven't been notified of that. I heard it was awarded through a channel, but I haven't been formally notified that it's been awarded and that I can share that Schedule I. There's nothing in that Schedule I that's, you know, secretive by any means, but why MnDOT holds that close to their vest is they don't want any of the actual work item unit prices becoming public information as they work through the bid approval process prior to award. And that ties back into their civil rights office and disadvantaged business enterprise items and commitments. So they've been burnt before is what it boils down to, with unit prices getting out and contractors basically, how should I say this, you know, not playing nice with respect to the DBE and civil rights goals is what it boils down to. So that's why they hold that information close to their vest.
Yeah, and I did have to sign off on
Yeah.
I had Mark look at it, which let's leave it at that.
So at this point, we know our cost commitment. We'll talk more about that in more detail later on, or shortly here. Maybe we'll actually do the new business item prior to opening the hearing at 6 o'clock. yeah, the city will be invoiced, that should be coming any day now, so we'll be invoiced for our $3.2 million. Andy and I have spoken about that. We're gonna try to expedite the bonding that the city's issuing of our 2020 bonds, so Andy's actually hoping to do that starting the end of April, early May, and get it done sometime in June. I think actually the first council meeting in June, so, you know, in comparison to October, late September or October in a normal year.
And we're just burning through all of our debt plan, the bonding amount anyway with the project, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we have a couple other things, Steve, yeah, and Andy's well aware of this. You know, we have the Alley 57, VFW Alley, you know, the city has a share in that, and we'll talk more about that here, in probably the first council meeting in April. I'll bring that purchase order for the council's approval, and how that's gonna be split between the VFW and the city. The other improvement project is the utility extensions associated with the Civil Air Patrol site. So actually staff's meeting on that tomorrow. We're hoping to get that moving, and well, we've made a fair amount of progress. However, we are waiting on the hydraulic study by a consultant with respect to that ditch down there. So we really need that to arrive at the sizing of the pipe, the culvert at the very least, when we design that ditch crossing with our water main that will now be extending across that ditch. So that should be coming soon. We should be able then to finish up the final design on that front. I hopefully get a fairly confident estimate. I hesitate to say that in this environment we're in because, yeah, I don't know if there is a confident estimate to be had on the construction front right now, but we'll probably inflate some numbers, get them to Andy, and then Andy will, you know, look at what contributions our utility funds can make to that improvement project, and then, you know, whether or not we should be upping our bonding target a little bit to offset some contributions from the utility funds. So those are really the three projects this year. I guess the fourth one, which is coming out of the water fund, is the Century Avenue reconfiguration of that water main. So we've spoken about that a few times now. We do have a quote in hand. Well, we actually have 4 quotes in hand. We have a low quote. We'll bring that purchase order to council at the first meeting in April also. So yeah, long answer to your question, Steve, but yeah, the pieces are in place. We have a pretty good idea where we're gonna be landing, bonding wise and utility fund contribution wise. Otherwise, pre-construction meeting tomorrow that MnDOT has arranged with the contractor, and yeah, there's about 25 people invited to that meeting. That's gonna be via teleconference at this point, obviously, so just be a handful of people sitting in the room, and then the other 20 will dial into that. So we'll learn more tomorrow about the contractor's schedule. What we do know at this point is they do want to start right away on April 13th, and that's the stated start date for the project specifications. So that's a good thing. Albeit with the pandemic going on and everything, you know, nothing's a given that they're going to be able to continue work, you know, throughout. There might be a suspension to be had at some point, but we'll see how things evolve. The open house meeting, I think everybody's aware of this, that has been, really was never communicated. MnDOT had identified April 7th. And then they reeled that back in pretty quickly. They are gonna do a virtual open house, so I think it's more or less gonna be a PowerPoint that's gonna be sent out, and that'll be sent, I'll forward it on to council. We'll do a link to it through the city's website, city's Facebook page. The chamber can push it out through their conduits also. So I think MnDOT's putting a lot of thought into what that's going to consist of, and we provided some information that will be communicated through that also. That should be coming next week.
Good to send it to the leader as well, and they
Yep.
can put it out.
Yeah, and actually, the leader is doing well, between the leader, Mary at the chamber, and Sandra at MnDOT and their public relations group up in Wilmer, they're on the same page. So they're discussing things amongst themselves. There's actually at some point, I believe next Wednesday, if I remember correctly, they're going to actually do kind of a project. I think it's going to be 4 pages, just based on the project, and it's going to show the staging and a lot of the information that's already been pushed out, obviously, but it's going to compile that and condense it, I think, in almost a kind of an insert fashion that can be set aside. Yeah, I'm looking forward a little bit. MnDOT public engagement, they're looking at doing a weekly update through their public relations office. Chamber, Mary and I have talked quite a bit. They have a good idea of where they're heading. Mary was going to be here, but with everything going on, she elected just to give me a quick update, and I handed this out, obviously, to you guys also, but yeah, just to work through this quickly, the chamber tourism, just general efforts, I guess, there on the left-hand side. The chamber has tied up 4 billboards coming into Hutchinson on the trunk highways. Basically just to stress that business is still open in general, not only in downtown, but also in the South Commercial District. Obviously you want to get out the word, support your local businesses, communication. Yeah, Mary's done a great job, and Chad's well aware of this, working, and you too, Steve, in our citizen advisory group, and then also there's been the smaller group that I believe Chad's been involved in, and, looking forward and along the way here as far as deriving the communication approach. And there was just a meeting, a couple weeks ago,
Yep.
on that front, so. Yeah, Mary's putting that together, business support, events, as we go into each phase or during each phase, just general community support through the ambassadors and Think Local. And then, like I said, there it is, 2-page handout, 2-page layout, in the leader that'll be coming up here. The leader's going to do a live construction camera. So MnDOT had decided they weren't going to do it, and evidently between Mary and the leader, they decided they wanted to have one. So I'm not sure how that's going to be situated or the specifics of it, but that's always interesting. Regularly scheduled weekly updates. Yeah, the contractor, and this is really has evolved within MnDOT and how they deliver projects nowadays. The contractor is required to have a public relations effort / person, might be a firm. I'm not exactly sure what this particular contractor is proposing. We're going to learn more tomorrow at the pre-construction meeting, but they are required to have a weekly meeting. They are required to, for the most part, be the interface between property owners and residents, well, more primarily property owners, business owners in this project, and really arriving at the communications approach. And that's outlined within the specifications, and that's part of their contract. So we'll learn more tomorrow how that's going to be formulated and structured. So MnDOT puts a lot on the contractors to do that. nowadays. This is different than Highway 7, 12, 13 years ago. Where really a lot of that fell on the city directly. Really, the city's now looking kind of from the outside in. Granted, we'll be out there talking to property owners with respect to their sewer and water services, temporary water, shutdowns, and et cetera. We'll handle that directly. But a lot of the general project concerns, I can't get into my front door, stuff like that. That's supposed to be brought through the contractor and then to MnDOT. And hopefully MnDOT's hope is when it hits the contractor's public relations person, their commitment to do that effort, it should be addressed then and there. So we'll see how that goes.
What
a
is
little
this?
skeptical, I'll admit, but we'll learn more tomorrow what the approach is going to be.
So what does the spec outline? Is that person supposed to be available pretty much as issues come up?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, basically the expectation is, I don't know if it's 24/7, but I think it's pretty close to that. And yeah, they're supposed to be available. They're supposed to be responsive. That's supposed to be their role in the project. A lot of times the struggle is, and we even see this on our projects that are obviously smaller than this effort, but it's a struggle to get a contractor and his personnel to focus on, sometimes in their mind, the little things. Just touching up a driveway, touching up an access point, doing this and that, when they're worried about, their production rates and how much digging and how much pipe they're gonna get in the ground and how much labor they have showing up that day or how many trucks they have coming in and out of the site. So, yeah, this is a good thing. I hope it goes well. Updates on the web. We talked a little bit between myself and Mary and also the Citizen Advisor Group about doing a phone-based application, an app, and trying to drive people towards that. As Mary researched that with people that are in that business locally, it was really arrived at that probably wasn't the best approach. I thought maybe it was a little simpler to do than it actually is. So, and there's obviously costs associated with something like that. So we're really gonna default back to the Chamber's website and try to make that as interactive, dynamic, functional as possible. And, Mary has some resources in town, as far as web development. So I'm confident we're gonna have a page that not only is gonna tell people general project construction information that you would, honestly, for the most part, you should be able to find on MnDOT's site, but you actually be able to find out, hey, I can access this business from their front door at this point or time. Or I should use the back door at this point of time to access this business. So it's really trying to make that just as dynamic as possible. So business owners, the chamber can push people towards that site and they can get accurate information to get people into their doors. I don't know if you have anything on that. I know we've been talking about that, Chad.
No, they haven't updated what that's gonna look like yet. I think it's still maybe in process.
Exactly.
But I know like Vivid Image is working on a campaign, but they haven't rolled it out yet.
Downtown Association, looking to move picnic in the park to coincide with music in the park. And then, they are going to maintain music in the park on Mondays, so.
Maybe Chad's better for this, but as far as the water carnival parade,
That's all up in the air.
Yeah, I think that's, Chief Gifferson and I haven't spoke about it. Chief Hatton, and I spoke quite a bit about it, and he notified them long ago, the J.C.'s. I think they've rerouted that.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Correct,
routed down
Jeff?
Franklin,
Yeah.
but whether or not, like with COVID, that's what
Well, yeah, that's true,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean-
true at this point in time.
They kind of have a tiered plan
Yeah.
based on what's
Yeah,
gonna happen.
Yeah.
So,
it's been rerouted, it's gonna still take place, but obviously with the
Yeah.
pandemic,
the,
yeah.
the route is gonna be the same, it's just gonna be on Franklin, assuming that the intersection by Wells Fargo is open, which it should be by
We should be
June.
by then, yeah.
So otherwise, the parade will be exactly the same.
Yep.
But all of them, all events are subject to
Exactly.
being open,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, arts and crafts, that's out at the fairgrounds, I believe, if I remember
Heard
correctly.
that, yeah.
So that's where the chamber's at, I guess a little bit more on that front, what I've been working with Mary a bit is, what's that? There we go. Yeah, just trying to drive people to parking lots, our city municipal parking lots. You know, MnDOT's detour plan is gonna push people to Adams here, and that's these signs showing them at the Washington Second and Fifth South. At any point in time during the project, 2 out of those 3 east-west collector streets will be open. Obviously, during the specific phases, these other roadways will be closed. I should note though, and we can talk more about this in the phasing plan, but the first phase is, well, that's a short phase, it's just this intersection of Second North by Wells Fargo and then down at Franklin and Second to make a sanitary sewer connection. But then, once that gets opened up, it'll be these 2 blocks will be under construction through Washington, albeit the closure actually has to be just north of First Avenue North, because you can't have people entering that block into a dead-end scenario. But MnDOT on the south end of town, their sign will change as construction progresses. So people entering from the south end of town down by Menards, they're gonna see a sign that says Highway 15 closed at First Avenue North. You know, so it's not gonna tell people initially. I know the signs out there today, are just basically communicating the whole scope of the project. But that's a little misleading, because on the front end, those signs, they might even say up to Washington Avenue. I'd have to look back at the plans. It might not actually account for that block, but that additional block. And then that sign will change to Second or Third Avenue, and then finally during the 4th phase, it'll change to Fifth Avenue South. So hopefully people entering from the south side of town, if they're going, to Chad's Bike Shop, during the second phase, they can still get there from the south. They don't have to follow the long 115 detour to come all the way around.
About from the
And get over
north,
to Adams.
about from the north, I mean.
The north, they
and
will get pushed over to Adams.
If they want to go downtown, because normally the main detour is going west on 7, right? Wasn't that?
Yes, well, yes, the main detour is gonna tell them to take a right at 7 and 15.
Right.
But there's also gonna be the downtown district signs that are gonna tell them to take a left
Yeah,
over to
okay,
Adams.
Okay.
And funnel in on
Yep.
these roadways.
okay.
But then, what Mary and I arrived at here is our city parking lots. They wanted to do, let's get small here, a sign, like that typical sign there. That would be a 4x8 sign. Mary's working with a sign fabricator to have these signs developed and have them basically provided to the city. John and staff, we've had conversation about mounting those, probably just simply on 4x4s and a sheet of plywood, I believe. And we would put those at each of the respective parking lots to give people a little better idea, hey, which parking lot should I park in off of Hassan and Franklin, you know, to access which businesses. Used to be a lot of businesses on signs, but, you know, you get some of these that have a fair number, but that is what the Marion Chamber staff arrived at.
There was talk of an app, developing an app for businesses. Was that
Yep.
able to be done, or?
No, like I just alluded to, Mary had some conversations with Vivid Image.
Oh, that was that part of it, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't very cost effective or all that feasible, you know, as far as functionality. And I'll just touch on this, is what I just explained. There's the detour. Probably this drawing has been around for some time. These are just the downtown business district signage. So obviously if you're coming in from the north or coming in from the south, this will push you this direction. But there's also going to be the sign that says Highway 15 is closed at Washington or 2nd or 5th. So people have a general idea or some, you know, familiarity where they're going. They could get up the road on the early stages of the project and might be able to get to where they want to be. On the other hand, they could get up the road regardless early on and at least turn off on turn off on 2nd South and get over to Hassan and Franklin respectively. And I think people come up that learning curve hopefully pretty quickly, and honestly I have my doubts how many people are going to actually utilize the overarching detour on 115. You know, if they're not going downtown, I think we're going to see people, even if they're going around town, figure out I'm going to go out to 22, or if they're looking to get into the west side of town, they're going to get over here to School Road and utilize School Road and then feed into where they want to go from there. But with that said, we've ordered some extra signs. John has those on hand, you know, no truck signs, road closed signs. You know, if we do need to close some roads or post some roads, no trucks, we can be responsive as quickly as possible. And lastly, just quickly, talked about this quite a bit. This has been pushed out by MnDOT many times. There is the staging plan. Like I said, first stage in orange, just the intersection of 2nd Avenue North. A little bit of work down there at 2nd South and Franklin. That's about 2 weeks worth of work is what's allocated for. And then you get into the first real stage per se. Stage 2 from 2nd North through Washington Avenue. Stage 3, obviously Washington South through 2nd South. And then the last 3 blocks through 5th Avenue. And again, it's a lot of work in one construction season. That still continues to be a concern, especially with this pandemic going on. If we do lose some days or construction does have to be suspended, that could present an issue in a hurry. I think we all have to be aware of that. I think it's a good thing at this point that we're proceeding on schedule, that the contractor is eager to get started, and hopefully, you know, if there does become a need for a suspension at some point, hopefully a fair amount of work can be arrived at before that happens. With that, any
You
questions?
mentioned with that though, Kent, even with that phasing, that the actual paving will be done in 2 stages?
Yep, when basically 1, 2, and 3 are completed, You know, the sidewalks will be done, the curb will be in place, the gravel grade on the roadway will be completed. They then are, the contractor then is responsible to come in and mobilize their concrete paving operation and pave through Second Avenue South. I would guess that's probably Labor Day, give or take. Yeah, that'll be completed.
The thinking with that was that a large chunk of it will be paved in case the weather
Exactly.
turns bad
Yeah.
or whatever.
Remember those conversations? From the city's perspective, we really fought for having 2 mobilizations on the concrete paving, you know, because my fear would be that, yeah, it's more cost effective to only have 1 mob to bring in a roadway paving operation, but, you know, weather doesn't cooperate, or now this pandemic, you know, element, at least we'll have pavement. I think we're really relatively assured that we would have pavement through Second Avenue. And then, yeah, if worse came to worse, I think the hope would be you'd get from Second Avenue through Fifth Avenue to a gravel grade and at least get some temporary blacktop over it for the winter months. That's it.
Ken?
Mayor and council, it is 6 o'clock, and so this is the public hearing portion. As we noted, obviously due to COVID, we've asked the property owners not to show up for the public hearing tonight. And so the direction from staff is to call the public hearing to order and then to recess it to July 14th. Is that at 6 o'clock as well, Kent? Is that what
Yep.
we're looking for?
Maybe at 6 also.
Here in the council chambers, is that our plan at this time?
Yep, that'd be our plan at this point.
Call the public meeting to order. Or
Public
make a
meeting to order.
motion, sorry about that.
We're gonna recess it till,
Have a motion to recess it to July 14th at 6 PM here in the council chambers.
So moved.
Second.
motion by Chad, second by Dave. We gotta open it up for public comment.
Nope, we didn't, nope, so we recessed that.
Yeah.
So,
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
All right, to finish that item, we need to, or request that you approve the resolution in your packet accepting bids and awarding contract. Like I mentioned earlier, the 2 bid amounts from R&R and Dunick are included respectively, and the city's cost participation, that's just our construction cost, just over $3 million. So of the $11.5 million construction cost from R&R, we're paying just over $3 million per our cooperative agreement that was approved, probably 3 months ago at this point. So with that, yeah, I'd recommend adopting this resolution.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
By Chad, second by Steve.
Yep.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
And then the last item on your agenda, the menu of cost and funding mechanisms. Yeah, I won't dive into this too much here. There's a lot of moving parts, but like I just said, $3 million of the total estimated cost of 3.9 million or so, just short of $4 million. That's the actual construction. And then you get into, that's basically the top 3 items. Then you get into our construction engineering, that's required of the city, to be paid to MnDOT per our agreement. That's basically for them to administer the construction inspection and administration, relative to city roadway items, lighting, traffic signal, those costs. They'll be administering and inspecting that work that we're paying for. Then you go down from there, you get into the city project fees. We have our standard 15% engineering. We have 3% for administration. And we actually dropped off the other 3%. We typically arrive at 21% total. There's another 3% under administration that goes back to the engineering budget. Noting that we're generating $453,000 just on 15% alone. Andy and I thought that all we need is another $35,000 to cover our engineering budget, which is at $487,000 and change. So we'll generate some fees off of that Civil Air Patrol utility extension project. You know, we'll make up that difference. So with that, we arrived at those two numbers, 453 and 90,000 for city administration costs. 3% construction contingency. We always want to have a little bit of contingency for change orders, unexpected conditions, circumstances. We have the traffic signal materials that are going to be provided by MnDOT. That's our share of the traffic signal cabinets that come out of MnDOT's signal operations down in the metro area. Basically, what we're paying for is $15,000 to pay for half of the 3 cabinets each. Engineering services, this is geotechnical testing that'll be administered through the city by our geotechnical engineering consultant. Basically, trench compaction tests on our sewer and water installations. Streetscaping, not within the MnDOT project. This is refurbishing benches, new trash receptacles, new planters. What am I missing? That's out there. Benches, trash receptacles, planters. Well, yeah, the clock's in there. Yeah, to move that, that's $1,000 that John arrived at. I think that's about it. Planters, receptacles, benches. Yeah, the lighting from a streetscaping standpoint, that's up within the top line, the project costs for the downtown roadways / general. The aesthetic credit was applied to that top line, so there $160,000 of that amount was paid by MnDOT. So that's their aesthetic credit per MnDOT policy that's applied to this project. And then, yeah, like Mark said, getting down to the bottom there, $1,000 for the city basically to salvage the historic Hager Brewery clock. I know there's a lot there. These numbers have been checked and double checked between myself and Mr. Reed. We talked about different cost scenarios and how that aligns with funding. I don't know if there's any questions with respect to the costs.
Guess I was just curious with the bonding, that's 2.1 and
Yep.
normally it's 1.9, right? So-
Yeah, I'll work through that quick, Steve. Yeah, from a funding standpoint, assessable costs, the general roadway costs, per that $28 a front foot rate that we've been talking about for some time, and it's been communicated to property owners, will arrive at $114,000. The water utility services and the sanitary utility services, basically the bids align very well with our estimate of $2,500 per service. The bid price was a little higher than that, but just by, I guess, coincidence or, that those prices did align very well, so we just left that assessment at $2,500 each for those services. Thus, you get the 134 and the 185. And then future connection charges, these are the sewer and water stubs that won't be connected to initially. So we didn't want to assess for these, we didn't necessarily want to have it accruing interest, you know, like an assessment, a deferred assessment. So we pulled it out, in essence, made it a future sack and whack charge. These will be accounted for within a separate register that's attached to the project assessment roll. And then, like you said, Steve, we get into the city bonding, which is really the number that's arrived at when you take the numbers, the funding mechanisms above it, and then you also take the funding from the water funds, the wastewater funds, stormwater. There are no stormwater contributions. That's a good thing on this project. We did hit that fund pretty hard last year on Fifth Avenue and South Grade Road. And then lastly, 78,000. That is, yeah, that's the streetscaping and the clock. I did pull out the 10,000. I didn't know, Andy and I were talking about whether that 10,000 should come from a different mechanism. That cost is up within the top line there, the downtown roadway / general costs. So it's that 10,000 onto the 67 and the 1,000, obviously. Yeah, 2.1. And yeah, that's the number that's arrived at. It's fairly close. I think we're fortunate at that. You know, like I said, the bids could have been worse. You know, it's not 1.9 with the interest rate environment we're in. Andy, I think, believes, and I'm sure he's talked to Matt, and you know that you know, we're going to be situated to go a little higher than 1.9, and still the math works out well with the interest rate levels that are currently out there on the bonding front.
And we're generally borrowing 2.6 million to pay for 1.9 in projects, and so you hope with the environment that we're in now with interest rates, that we should be okay with.
Yeah. And there might, yeah, there's more than likely gonna be a little bit more onto that, you know, to offset our share for the VFW alley. You know, we're talking $60,000. The Century Water Main stuff, that'll be out of the water fund. And I think the last big question is on the Civil Air Patrol utilities. Once we actually have a true number there, you know, it is sewer and water work, and maybe a little bit of storm water for that ditch crossing. But I think Andy's getting a little concerned with, you know, based on the amount that really landed on the water side here for the bids, you know, at 834,000 in comparison to what was on the wastewater sanitary sewer side here, 395,000. It's getting a little concerned with the water fund and the reserve balance. So there might be a thought to try to, you know, depending on how the math works on the bond issue, maybe absorb some of the water costs within the bond issue also. That's it from a funding standpoint. Yeah, I think it actually, looking back for the bonding number to land at 2.1, I think we're actually fortunate with this construction cost environment we're in and MnDOT's seeing, and it's even worse in the west side of the metro area right now.
Well, if worth, you know, the costs don't align quite right, you know, we do have fund balance, Matt, right? We could tap into some of that possibly
Project like this, yeah.
to help out.
You know, like I said, I think we all realize this is kind of the one, at least our lifetime project that quite frankly needs to get done. So, yeah, so if we run into that situation, that's why we have those fund balances, so.
Has, Kent, has anyone requested to have their water and sewer stubbed into the inside of their buildings yet?
Yes, there is one out there. We've started talking to, so.
Do you have any idea what that cost is gonna be?
No, I don't. It depends on the plumbing, the interior plumbing and how it's currently situated. within
So if you
the
just
building.
stubbed it in the wall, through the wall, it would be one thing. If you're hooking it up, it's another thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really, yeah, you could stub it through the wall and have a plumber do that, and that wouldn't be terribly costly. But if you're looking to actually make a connection to it and, you
Yeah.
know, situate your.
So if it is
plumbing
if it's
accordingly.
7 feet outside of the building and then you wanna do it, did I see somewhere it was like $2,500 to get it to your building after that? Or is that, am I
It
thinking-
really depends,
Okay.
Dave, on the foundation of the building,
Yeah.
what they have to go through, and, you know, the digging and the extra 7 feet or 10 feet of pipe to get it through the wall isn't that big a deal. It's, you know, how does it get situated once it's inside, and what are you going through? You know, there's a risk factor there, and that's really why we wanted to stay away from that. You know, some of these are old, very old stone foundations, you know, and
You know which one I'm thinking,
anytime you're plugging a hole through those, you know.
you know which one I'm thinking of then.
Yeah, that's on the property owner, you know,
Yeah.
to arrive at that and have that accomplished through their own
Okay,
contractor.
all right, thank you.
Yep.
You get a motion to approve the,
So moved.
Second.
motion by Chad, second by Steve to approve. Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, thank you.
Staff updates? Don, you have anything else?
No, I don't think, can't think of anything on this front.
All right, Mark?
I guess one thing I had wanted to touch on, the last couple of meetings, we had talked about alternative ways to have council meetings, and just before the meeting, you heard the short presentation from Director Tom Foss about ways that alternative meetings could be held. So I passed out an excerpt from a memo from the League of Cities that briefly outlines really the two alternatives that we have. I'll just go through the bullet points. So the first one on the first page that I highlighted talks about meetings conducted by interactive television. And it says that a city council can have interactive television for its meetings if the following requirements are met. At least one council member is physically present at the regular meeting location. All council members must be able to hear and see each other, and all discussion and testimony presented at any location at which one council member is present. All members of the public at the regular meeting location must be able to hear and see all discussion, testimony, and votes of all council members. And then finally, each location at which a council member is present must be open and accessible to the public.
To me, that's the one interesting thing when you look at that aspect of it. So if you were to do it, and if you're at your house, you have to allow the public.
Except it says if in the second bullet there. It says,
As long as you, yeah, it's not more than 3 times in a calendar
yeah,
year. So there are some
Right.
options to get
yeah.
around that. So,
So certainly you could think about having some type of video meeting, and Tom has assured us that he'd be able to set that up for us.
So what's really the difference? It says interactive television. Then this next one you're gonna talk about is telephone or electronic. What's the difference?
Because there are computer programs, and there's computer media offerings, one called WebEx. WebEx is video, but they also have an audio-only option, which I believe that the state feels is similar to telephonic communication.
I think it's our belief that something like a video would fall under the guise of electronic meetings.
Well,
As
that's
an
what I'm-
internet type of connection, because, you know, looking at the interactive television, it doesn't give you a really good definition of what interactive television is, and I don't believe a web-based platform is interactive.
Guess we'll find out.
Right. Well, and then just briefly on the last page, it talks about telephone meetings. And again, says that someone in official capacity with the city has to say it's not practical to have an in-person meeting. And you'll note at the bottom of that paragraph, it talks about specifically if there's a health pandemic, which seems to fit ideally in our current circumstance. All members of the governing body participating in the meeting have to be able to hear each other and hear all discussion and testimony. Members of the public present at the regular meeting location have to be able to hear all the discussion and testimony and votes of the public body. At least one member of the governing body, the chief legal counsel or the chief administrative officer have to be physically present at the regular meeting location. Then all votes have to be done by a roll call vote.
So, and this is some, obviously we've had some comments regarding meetings of the city council, and I think this is the legal aspect that we're required to comply with under the law when it comes to it. And so one of the things we've talked about, if we were to go the route of something like a telephone or electronic meetings, what likely would happen is Mark and I would be present in the council chambers. And that would kind of provide that public format. In talking with Tom, we believe that HCVN would either be able to record this, have the item included within the HCVN broadcast mechanisms, and depending on where the whole video aspect came into play, could potentially pipe into that as well. And so what would happen is that we would have the audio, if you want to say, here in this chamber, and you guys would be calling in from wherever location that you would want to be at, and that would meet the requirements of the law. A couple things to keep in mind, and we start talking about what about public comment. I think it's important to remember, both for the public and for the council, the only time the council is ever required to take public comment is when you have a public hearing. Every Tuesday when we have our meetings, there's no requirement for you guys to have input from the public. Now, we do that. I think it's a good public service. It's a good governance mechanism. But if you're to look to go at this point, this type of technology, you don't have to have public comment. And I guess the way that we would have or encourage the public to provide any feedback would be through email, potentially to the council. That's kind of how we would look at having that operated, if that's the route you would. So either which way is possible.
Like Tom said something about it and seeing if he could get the interactive TV going, and I think that'd be my.
Well, he was talking more of the video,
Video
the
stuff.
telephone electronic meetings portion. I think that's what we'd have to probably verify if that video conference falls under the
Interactive TV
interactive
or the
TV
telephone.
or the
Yeah.
telephone. Because if it does, I think the most logical step then would be just to do a telephone conference type of setup.
I think let Tom figure out what's the easiest for him to do.
Well, but this is the other thing that's important to keep in mind. We need to know from you guys how you want to conduct the meetings. We've said we're going to keep meeting in person, and that's fine. Because if we go to electronic, there needs to be,
Well, I think in both situations, we want to make sure we're notifying the public how the meeting is going to be conducted.
there's a requirement for
Specifically for the telephone one, it says that we have to say that members are going to be participating via telephone.
Can you mix it?
Can you
Can
what?
you mix being present at the council chambers as to well with someone at home?
You
Yeah.
wouldn't have to have
One person has to be here.
with.
Council member.
With the interactive TV, one person has to be present here. With
Same with the
With-
telephone.
the
Phone,
telephone,
it can just be
It says
me or
at
Matt.
least one member of the governing body has to be
chief
here.
chief legal counsel or chief administrative officer. So either myself, Mark, or one of the council members have to be present. So that's the one caveat, you wouldn't have to be present here. Now, if you wanted, you could have 2 or 3 of you present, and the other 2 or 3 could call in from a location. and
Yeah, that's what I was
participate.
asking. You could mix the two together and
You want.
accommodate the
Yes.
situation, so.
So even if we make the decision going towards, continuing to meet in person at the.
Event center?
At the event center, you could still have somebody telephone in. We would just have to make sure that
Everyone can hear each other.
everyone can hear each other and the vote's done by roll call.
I honestly wouldn't mind being at the event center if we spaced ourselves out and didn't have any public. I mean, if people are uneasy about technology, I mean, I think that we could do that.
I would plan on attending anyway, so I think, yeah, the event center, that just opens up more space for everybody, regardless if somebody wants to participate electronically.
I think it's important to note that it's available. I suppose, probably the quorum portion is what's going to be the big thing for us, and whether it's technically a telephone conference meeting or if it's a regular meeting.
Yeah, but if they're participating by phone, it still counts towards the quorum. So I'm not so concerned about that. What I am concerned most about is if someone is planning on participating by phone, which I think is a good choice for people, we just need to know that so we can have the proper notice go to the press and the public.
You talked to Mary by chance? If she
Yeah.
had a
Her
preference?
preference would be not to, obviously with her situation.
With the phone?
Would be,
though?
would not to be, whether it's phone or video, she's comfortable either which way.
So if you do at home, on the phone, whatever the case is, when you do a vote, then you have to roll call vote?
Every vote would have to be roll
Yeah,
call.
okay.
I think I'd like to have it at the event center.
And that's the direction you guys have given us, and that's where we're moving forward with. I just wanted to, there's some uncertainty here that we wanted to try to clarify a little bit.
So how about if we just do the electronic,
Sure.
telephone or electronic, to enable a council member who can't make it in person to have that
Participate.
option.
Sure.
And that's the easiest, it doesn't, just using the phone then. But then have it at the event center, and anybody else who wants to attend can, right?
Sounds
Does
good.
that work? Yeah.
It don't work sitting in your car in a 1-hour telephone conference.
Big thing with the phone is maybe mute it when you're not talking, and depending where you are. And
That's something too, and we'll have Tom communicate. It might be simple, like with the WebEx might be a good platform for people to use as a telephone mechanism. So we'll have those conversations. And
Right.
we'll work on that here this next week to communicate to the council members, okay, this is how this will work.
So do you think this would be available for our next meeting? Or,
I'm confident we can set it
Yeah,
up.
I mean, I will say this, we have the event center is currently set up to handle our next council meeting. And so it's just,
Just
I would think we can do that, so.
Just have to get it out to the public after.
Right.
we have to make a motion that we're gonna actually have our meeting at the event center the
No, if
next
you've already
time?
noticed the meeting at your last meeting would satisfy those legal requirements.
Okay.
So we'll just
I didn't know.
amend the notice to
To
include the telephonic participation.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Mark. Dave, you got anything tonight?
No, I don't. Just everybody be well, be considerate of others.
Steve?
No, same thing.
In the spirit of the, meeting today, I got a new back door at the shop, so it's pretty shiny back there now, so, looks good, so. But other than that, nothing.
Matt?
You know, I think the one thing is just a reminder for the public, especially when it comes to COVID-19, that most of the city services are still operational. Most of what we do is considered essential service. So if you're in need of something, that you can still reach out and be in contact with us at City Center. You know, the one thing that has changed was that the state did close down the DMV offices, and quite frankly, there's no access to them. Even if you mail stuff in to our local office, that's not going to be accessible. I think there's still some options for some online, especially when it comes to renewing of your tabs. And I believe the governor was going to, I'm not sure if he has, signed into law extension of deadlines when it comes to licenses and stuff.
He did.
Just heard that today.
Today.
But otherwise, for the most part,
Not
most,
licensed tabs,
Tabs.
driver's license.
yeah, driver's license.
Well, food licenses, there was several things that were,
Yeah, but I still believe tabs for your vehicles, you still need to,
Right,
Renew.
those you need that.
yeah. So, just that reminder for the public.
if you don't mind, Mayor, I have a couple things that slipped my mind when you asked me that uncertain question.
Go ahead.
Number one is, I see the street department's out patching little holes in the streets. Thank him for that. Made a difference in Washington by all means. Second Avenue did the same there, as far as they gotten. And thirdly, I guess basically is thank the Parks and Rec, Southwest Park, or South Park, whatever they want to call the Lions Park out there by Southview. They tore all the equipment out of there today, so that's, haven't talked to Sarah, but hopefully that's a good sign that new equipment will soon start going in, so thank you for that.
Anything else, Matt? You got? All I have is, just, be safe and be smart on your travels, and, hopefully we'll get through this. I know we always rise up to the occasion, so, just be safe.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.